So I'd kind of been into training my whole life, really. Played rugby when I was younger, was really, really into sports, and had generally kept in good shape. Now, what happened was I broke my neck in 2012 playing rugby for Sheffield, which was a career-ending injury, unfortunately, and reacted very badly to that. And, I'm don't regret it because it was a lesson along the way, but looking back, I'm probably am fairly ashamed of the way I behaved. It was a big thing, rugby was my life. It was my sport. It was my passion. It was my social group. It was my weekends. It was my friendship group. It was absolutely everything. And to have that taken away in a click of the finger is hard to handle. I don't care what anyone says. But again, likewise, I've seen other guys handle it in a very different way. So another friend of mine who became injured went on to become kind of the club steward at the club, doing coaching, looking after everything, looking after the players on the day. And each to their own. Some people would feel great staying part of the community by doing that, even though they couldn't play. Whereas for me, it was just too hard. It would, it'd be like having a load of Christmas presents, but you're not allowed to unwrap them and play with them. If I would want to watch, I would just want to play rugby, and I found it too hard not to. So became quite isolated, started going out a lot, got more into my DJ career, partying every weekend, getting in late. It all just went a little bit downhill until I kind of had a moment where I'm like, this needs to change. Like, you can't carry on like this. You can't carry on boozing every weekend. My energy was shit. My work performance was shit. I ended up getting divorced because of my own behavior. And I was just miserable, living from week to week to week, living for the weekend so I could escape the life that I didn't love. And then I didn't have rugby at the weekend. So, there was no reason not to just get pissed up with my mates all weekend and behave, in a way that now I'm quite ashamed of. And it just came as a bit of an epiphany, really, when I've just sat there one day and I'm like, this isn't good enough. Like, this isn't the life that you want. This isn't who you are. So, if you are a guy who's gone into that zone and that's what you're doing, you're partying every weekend, you're eating shit all day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to try and feel better. I get it. I've been there, and it's always because we don't have a mission, we don't have a purpose, we don't have a focus, and as I've said before, that's what men need. So when we don't have a life that we're excited to work towards, then we will do things to escape the life that we're living that we don't love. And that was how I first stopped drinking and went teetotal. And people ask me all the time, how did you stop drinking? How did you manage to do it? And the answer was simple. I created a life that I didn't need to escape from. I'm not completely teetotal now. I might drink 2 or 3 times a year for very special occasions, but drink doesn't control me. I control drink, and I do it when I choose to. And when I do it for enjoyment and because it's a great occasion, like a wedding or a birthday or maybe a festival or an artist that I really want to see. I never, ever, ever drink to escape anymore, because I think if you are drinking and eating and sniffing and whatever people do, gambling to escape a life they don't love, it's a dangerous thing, because you're always going to have to go back to that life. So when I'd kind of gone through that epiphany and realized, this is what I wanted to do, I quit drinking for 12 weeks and started learning more about training, learning more about nutrition. I'd always done that because I'd trained and been reasonably healthy, through rugby and through sports and school and stuff, but it had slipped a long way. And I just got such a benefit from it. It was literally getting into training and nutrition and mindset was my therapy. It did save my life. It was just an unbelievable experience in just 12 weeks of not drinking, eating healthy, going to the gym every morning, doing personal development, listening to books like The Secret by Rhonda Byrne, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, the 7 Habits of Positive People, and all the stuff that I got into was life-changing. And when I did really clean my habits up and I got in the best shape of my life, I ended up competing in a physique modeling show 2 years later. everything else in life fell into place. So what I didn't really work on the career or, try to look for a relationship or make more money or any of those things. They all just happened. Everything that was positive in my life happened as a result of getting in great physical shape and working on my mindset. So the more I got in shape and the more mindset I did, the better I felt, the more energy I had, the more confidence I had. And it was that much of a life-changing experience that I then qualified to become a coach, because all I wanted to do, and this is when I talk about mission and passion and purpose, all I wanted to do in the world was take other men and women from where I was when I was at my lowest and take them through the exact experience that I'd had with training, nutrition, and mindset to live in the happiest, thriving, most fulfilling life that I never ever needed to escape from. And that was where the journey all started. But, the interesting part about this, and something that I've not really discussed before, obviously I was then in incredible physical shape. I went on to compete, competed in the British finals, and that's where most people think the story ends, and that it's been a happily ever after ever since. I have actually since struggled since then, and I feel it's fair to tell that to people, because I didn't publicize it at the time because of what I did as a job. I was a fitness, nutrition, mindset, mental health, life coach, therapist. It's whilst you can be, vulnerable and open and authentic, for career reasons, I didn't want to share some of the things that's happened. And, the next time that I really struggled was when Logan was born. He's 6 years old now. You guys see him on my social media. He's like my life. I literally live for him. He's my best friend. He's the only person that's ever taught me what unconditional love is. He's taught me more than any other human ever will at 6 years old. And he is my mission, my purpose, and my inspiration now. But it wasn't always that way. And I really struggled for the first couple of years being a dad and not really bonding. I think a lot of other men watching this will probably connect with it. I think a woman very much has that paternal and that, the motherly instinct from carrying the baby and it being born from, oxytocin right down to just that initial bonding straight after the birth. Whereas a man, it's a little bit different, and all of a sudden you have this little bundle of, they're described as bundle of joys, but I would actually never describe a baby between 0 and 12 months as a bundle of joy. And they essentially scream, shit, disrupt your sleep, you can't communicate with them, it's exhausting, it can become frustrating. And I really, really struggled with it. And I'd started to slip back into bad habits. I'd started, not exercising so well because I was tired. I started making excuses. I'd kind of started staying out late. My diet wasn't as good as it was. I'd started drinking at DJ gigs again. And it came to a point when, again, it hadn't gone anywhere near as bad as it was before, but I was starting to struggle a little bit. And I remember being at an event, a speaking gig in Manchester, with the mentorship I was in with Russell Kane, and then playing at Ministry of Sound in London that night as well, supporting Paul van Dyk. So I'd fully got back into the DJing, and I did the event in the day. Driver took me to London, played at Ministry of Sound, ended up having a shitload of tequila. Driver brought me home, and I rocked back through the door at 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, I think. And I wasn't a mess, but I was exhausted, and I got a couple of hours sleep, and I got up, and Logan wanted my attention. He was thinking he was about 2.5, 3 then, and I couldn't even function. I was exhausted. I'd not slept. I'd eaten a load of sweets on the way home. And it was that second epiphany when I just thought, this isn't good enough. Like, He deserves more. He deserves you to be present. It was a Friday night. It's his Saturday. He wants you. He wants to play Lego. He wants to do all these things. And, you know, it kind of breaks my heart to say this, but, you know, there were times back then when I didn't show up. I didn't show up as the man he needed to be. You know, I wasn't looking after myself, protecting my energy and my sleep and making sure that I was present with him. And it was literally that day when that was the last DJ gig that I did, which is kind of a great highlight to go out supporting Paul van Dyk and Ministry of Sound. I've still got the mix of that event, so if anyone wants it, let me know. But that was the last DJ gig, because that was the day when I've just said enough is enough. And, you know, my main focus since then has always been, I want to be the man that he needs. I want to be the dad that he needs. I want to be a role model. I want to show him, not tell him. And I want to be a man that, if I was him looking up at my dad, I would be looking at that man saying, I'm proud that he's my dad. You know, that's my dad. Look how strong he is. Look how fit he is. Look how hard he works. He's always got time for me. He always shows up and he always puts me first. And, you know, hand on heart, I can say I have been since then, but I wasn't always. So, you know, if any of you are kind of struggling and you've slipped into that, even maybe new dads who have, you know, experienced that in the early stages, or, you know, maybe your kids are starting to get a bit older and, you know, they're starting to notice things like Logan. I cannot say anything at the minute that Logan won't repeat. So what we have to realize as dads is, well, they're also doing the same in actions. So if they can hear you say, boobies, that's a really immature word, but then they go to school and they repeat boobies. If they're seeing you drinking beer, then they're also acknowledging that you're drinking beer. If they see that you're getting pizza every night, they think it's okay to eat pizza. If you're speaking to your wife or your partner like shit because you're tired and you're mardy and you're snappy because you're not looking after your sleep, your energy, your mindset and your habits, then you're showing them that's okay to speak to a woman like that. That's okay to treat that child's mum like that. That's okay to booze every night. And just like they're hearing things and repeating things, they will repeat those behaviors. And a huge thing that I do now, and I always try to be authentic and I always try to be honest, like every night I look at myself in the mirror before I go to bed, and I ask myself the question, did you show up as the man that Logan needs today? And are you proud of how you showed up today? Did you do enough? Were you present? Did you give today everything? And sometimes the answer to that's not always yes. I'd say I'm a solid 5 out of 7. Sometimes I do have days when I'm tired, I'm miserable, I'm stroppy, I maybe snap at him, but I always take ownership and responsibility and accept the lesson. And I think that's what we all need to do. So if I realize on that kind of self-awareness task that actually he just wanted your attention in the car and you snapped at him because you were trying to do some work or something, and that wasn't good enough, then that's okay. Don't berate yourself for it. But I will then put that on my notes for that night to remember that, you know, this is where I need to improve. And I think that's a huge thing for life, to take ownership and responsibility about any of the actions that you do, whether it's as a dad, as a business owner, as a partner. You know, we all make mistakes. We're all human. We all overreact when we're tired. We all have weak moments with food and drink, and we all make mistakes. We all make bad decisions. But what's not okay is to keep making the same mistake and the same decisions over and over again, because, you know, once is a mistake, twice is a decision. So even if we use that story as an example, so, you know, I made the decision to do 2 extended gigs in 48 hours. I made the decision to drink heavily at Ministry of Sound. And the result was that the weekend was written off. I wasn't present with him. I was tired. I was mardy. I was stroppy. And that wasn't good enough. So that's why I didn't do it again, because I accepted the lesson. I took ownership and responsibility and decided that was the last gig that I was going to do. Was not okay, in my opinion. is to then go and do the same thing again. So you've done something that you know full well has had a negative effect on your family, it's had a negative effect on your kids, it's had a negative effect on your own life. And we need to assess that and understand that, that was a decision, that was a choice. And if we want a better life and we don't want it to happen again, then we need to make different choices. And all of this stems from not having that, the energy, the confidence, the drive, the focus, being present with them. Everything to do with a parent and success in business, 12, 13 years on from that very first experience, when I had the first epiphany, still to this day and age, stems from a healthy diet, exercising every day, getting outside, getting your steps in, hydrating, journaling, doing mindset work every day, and having a mission and a purpose to focus on and a compelling vision of your future that you're moving towards, so you don't ever need to escape life. And that is the key to a happy life, is creating a life that you don't need to escape from.